Hi, my name is Charlotte Brathwaite, and I've been asked by some friends, like family at La Mama CultureHub, to engage in a conversation about remapping. So I thought I'd pull together a few people who I love to talk to. I've got Adrienne, Malick, and Wendell here. Thank you for being here, y'all. I'm really grateful to be in conversation with you. And the theme we're exploring is remapping and thinking about the ways maps shape the way we understand land, history, power, and belonging, and how maps speak to an identity of place and people. And before maps became instruments of empire, they were ways of finding one another. They were star paths, river knowledge, salt routes, migration stories carried in the body. And in a way, I see an introduction as a sort of map to who each of us are. And I think self identification is really important in this world. So I'd like to begin by asking each of you to introduce yourself and maybe just respond to this question. When you hear the word map, what image or memory first comes to mind for you? Or what maps have shaped you? And I'll put the question in the chat as well for you.
Mm, I can start.
Sure.
Um, so I'm Adrienne Marie Brown. I'm a writer, and more lately I've been thinking of myself as a public conversationalist. So I really like to learn in public. I'm not interested in like speaking at anyone anymore. I'm really interested in like getting lost together and finding our way together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I live in Durham, North Carolina, which is the ancestral homeland that I know of in this life. I never expected to live in the deep south of the US, but here I am. And so the first thing that comes to my mind when you say map is the North Star. Um, and I think about Harriet Tubman understanding that the North Star was a constant point that she could orient herself towards, and that it was a point of freedom that she could orient herself and her people to. And I'm interested in that kind of map, like that kind, something that's just like, this is just here. It's always here. You can always trust it. I think love is a North Star like that exists in our lives where you can kind of always trust that love is there, even if you might feel lost from it. It doesn't mean it's gone. It's just you have to get your eyes back on it. Maybe you have to let the darkness come back again so you can see where the light is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the only other thing I'll say is I'm obsessed with labyrinths. And I think labyrinths are another kind of cartography. They found labyrinths all over the world and they're very ancient. But a labyrinth, the defining feature is that there's one way in and one way out. And you're always the same person and always a different person walking the labyrinth, walking through the tunnel of the labyrinth. I keep a labyrinth. I have it tattooed on my body, and all the children in my life have gone, played with the labyrinth on my skin, and so it's like, um, I think there's a way that all maps are also like that. Ursula Le Guin said in her book, The Dispossessed, true journey is return. And so I think there's something about a map that is like, how do we find our way somewhere and how do we find our way back? And all along, how are we finding our way in? So that's me.
Wow.
How about you, Wendell?
Yeah, I thought I was gonna talk about one particular map, and then as Charlotte asked specifically, a different map came to mind, and it was kind of the a globe actually that I grew up with in my childhood home in Atlanta. And when I was growing up, the globe was already kind of very old, and it kind of had been yellowed, and it had the USSR, even though this was well after um, uh, that was no longer an entity.
Mm,
But I remember looking at this globe, for hours. I would just be fascinated by looking at the globe in my own home, and um, it's yeah, that's what's the image of that globe is really kind of in the forefront of my mind in this conversation.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Wendell, what do you do?
Yeah,
How do you introduce yourself?
introduction, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
so the maybe that globe has been a part of who I've become. So I am a philologist, I like to say, and by that I mean a lover of study.
Yeah.
Professionally, I am a professor of African literature and philosophy at Muhammad VI Polytechnic in Morocco. This is a new role for me. Before that, I was in the Black Studies department in Rutgers, Newark.
Um,
But yeah, my work has taken me a lot of places on that globe in Africa, in the Middle East, and Europe, and um, I hope that to explore a lot more places on that globe before it's all said and done.
Nice. What about you, Malik?
Hmm. When I think about map, I see my mom throwing water, on my feet when I travel and asking for protection, and also seeing my dad also walking on the path of my ancestors, showing me where my ancestors live in his village and where they come from. And I'm also someone who you know who left home when I was 5,
mm,
and always looking for a way back. And you know, I didn't have any idea of map during that time. On my 9 years old child who's looking, a way back home. Always, when they bring me in a new city, the next thing I want to do is like finding, my next transportation to go to see my mom. And I always like left that place, and finding the way to go home was so difficult for me. I don't know. I didn't have any idea where to make, how to make to home, and I was like stuck somewhere in a place. I spent some days there, and people making announcements saying that they see a child, they don't know where he's from, and since like some people hear that announcement in the radio and go to see my mom, where he was in the market selling fruit to to just like make our life better. And some people come to her saying, we heard this announcement, someone we found in a place, and we don't know who's the child of who. And my mom came to see me and asked me if I what I want to do now. Am I going to the school, or who I gonna go with him? I was just like, bring me home, please. And
yeah.
I'm just my relationship with map is always a challenge, for me, because
Yeah.
I'm someone who has the deep love, of traveling and seeing the world, but always like ready to go home. Yeah.
I understand.
Where's home and what do you do? Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
I'm Malick Welli. I'm a visual artist. I can call myself multidisciplinary artist. I'm a photographer. I do, installation. Uh, yeah, and most of my work is questioning identity and religion and spirituality.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And where's home for you?
Home for me, I can consider, Dakar is my home. But I'm also someone who's looking permanently home.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Cool. Thank you. I'll answer.
Yeah.
I love these answers. They're so evocative. Thank you so much. So I'm Charlotte Brathwaite. So I guess formally I'm a director, but the more I think about what it is I'm actually doing, I love the art form of gathering
Yeah.
people, gathering energies, gathering ideas. And then I think part of, I guess what I do within that gathering, I guess I would say I'm the party planner.
Mm.
So I really like bringing smart, interesting people to the table, good food, giving us, what is it? What are we eating? Is it literature? Is it actually food? Is it ideas? And then like, what do we create together? I mean, and then I guess formally those works, show up as either theater or installations and performances. Sometimes they show up as films, as operas, and we all have worked together, everybody in this room. So that's exciting to, find another manifestation of how the gathering can work and collaboration continues. And when I think of maps, I have been crossing borders since before I was born. My my family's from Barbados, and from Barbados, I've called England, Canada, the United States, and now Senegal home, and many places in between, many couches, many spare bedrooms across the Americas as well, and Europe. So, I think the idea of maps has always shaped me, but always just like also breaking them. And then also there's a privilege in being able to do that, like actually physically. And I also think, professionally, I think that, people like to put a lot of borders on what is it you do. And I'm constantly always thinking about, okay, well, how can I, bring this person in and bring that person in? Because I feel like theater and art making is inherent to being human. And it's like actually like air, like breathing. It is a necessity for people to make things together and to be creative and to sing and all of those things together. And so I love thinking about Octavia Butler, We Are Stardust. Yes. I feel that really in my heart and my spirit that I am connected and we are connected. And so that's also like my practice, I think very much about bringing the collective energies together and, seeing what thing we can create that none of us could have created alone. So I have a few questions. And so I love, Malick, that you brought up this idea of mother and father, the ritual of throwing water at the door front. So before you're going to go on a long trip in Senegal, before you step out the door, people throw water and you offer a prayer and you mark certain amount of numbers in the water, and then you step over with your right foot and you don't go back until it's time to come back. And that has shifted how I think about comings and goings in a really deep way. And what does it mean to long, to both see yourself in the world and then also to come home. So I'm curious to ask you all, so who taught you or what taught you how to orient yourself in the world? Anybody?
I think me personally, what, I think from the story I have heard in my family, and the sound I have heard in my life, in Senegal, and also the smell, also and all of this make me think about home every time I'm somewhere. It's just like the story. I think my connection with where I'm from is always like it's shaped. The story shaped the connection also. And I think that I can say this. This story. Most of it is like this story. For me.
Yeah, I love that you're saying story, Malick, because when I think about orientation for me, I grew up, my father was in the military, which means my family was in the military. It's like we were moving to different US bases, basically like every 2 years of my childhood. And so home meant family. Like it just meant wherever my family, wherever my parents were, wherever our unit was, that was home. and that was always the orientation. I learned to land and like unpack very quickly and be like, here are my little things, and this is now home, and just like let that be. It's taken me a long time to learn to feel that way about land, about place. Um, but I think it's also the story, like I grew up in a story that was actually quite disorienting because in that story, I belonged everywhere I was, which is not true. Right now that I'm an adult, I'm like, the US military didn't belong in any of the places that I grew up. And, uh, and everyone had to make me feel welcome. They had to make me feel like it was okay. They diplomatically had to make it okay. And there's something so helpful, I think, about the politicization I went through in college, which was a reorientation that has completely changed how the world looks to me and what home means and what welcome means, what an authentic, like the value, the blessing, the miracle of a real welcome when people are really want you there. Um, and I'm really troubled by borders. I identify as a post-nationalist because I'm troubled by the story of what a border means and what it's supposed to do to a person's value in this world. But I'm also really fascinated by culture and place. Like I think I've traveled to so many places where I was like, oh, this culture really orients to this land in such a particular beautiful way. And I'm really curious about how we make a world where all those cultures can still be deeply rooted in place without the violence of borders between us.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm thinking about my grandmother's garden, her backyard, her, just my early years, so many of my kind of early memories. I'm actually with her. And
Yeah.
so if I think about orientation, there are some things that, if I really probe to think about, okay, very deeply, what do I believe or even know to be true?
Mm.
There are the kinds of things that I learned from her, with her. I think they're often very ecological, right? A certain, um,
Was it your
energetic.
paternal grandmother?
Yeah, maternal grandmother. Maternal
Maternal.
grandmother.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I would have to say Willie Marvelous Petty.
What did she grow?
Um, she grew greens. She grew, I remember some squashes. She had this big fig tree, um, that, always, like, we could never pick them and they were always on the ground, uh, like green beans. That's what I remember.
That's beautiful.
I remember also just a lot of yard work too.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
It's funny that Wendell's saying about talking about his grandmom. We used to say in Wolof, when you don't know where you're going, you should come back where you come from.
Yes.
And I think that that's beautiful thing that you have with your grandmom, that her garden make you make your orientation.
Yeah.
I just had a conversation with a friend, a childhood friend that I just that I didn't see for 5 years or 10 years, and I just met him in New York this during this trip, and he's someone who came he traveled to United States through Nicaragua, and I invite him over here. I was curious to know what his experience in New York and in United States. We during our conversation, who was telling me that he doesn't want to go home now, and I asked him why. He say, "Oh, there's nothing home." I say, "That's not true. There's something home. There's, you left your mom there, and you have left your mom and your family there." I say, "Yeah, there was a time before I came here, I was just looking for my way out, and I was ready to go anywhere. And United States come to my mind, and he's here for I think 2 years now, and I was asking him what's your plan? What are you doing here? And he's like, yeah, I'm just here, struggling, making life, just like try to make better, and taking these jobs, from Amazon and other, thing, just to make, to survive this American dream. I was like, okay. And he was just like, I don't know when I'm going back home.
Mm.
And when he said that, I just like, I start, having my tears, because, I've been, I have left home a month now, and, I am like, yeah, I'm looking for the next plan
Yeah. Yeah.
to go home, and I'm to go back, and he doesn't have any plan. He's like, my plan, if I live here to go to Senegal, I might not come back, or they're gonna put me in jail or whatever. And he say, I'm looking to marry someone here, and now the rules has changed. The only people I can marry here is military or veteran. If I even like marry a normal citizen, they're gonna put me in the next plan to go to Senegal.
Yeah.
Just like to just go back to what made me think that I have connection with home is the story I have heard. Through my mom. My mom was always like telling me, I'm not stopping you to go, but always have in your mind, if you don't have anything, you have me here, and you have the love, that you don't have any shame, to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, because growing up in Canada with Bajan parents, home was always somewhere else.
Yeah.
When they said home, they weren't talking about like our address in Toronto. They were talking about Barbados. And that was always a consistent thing in my life, that home is not here. Home is there. And there's a certain set, somebody had brought up smells and colors and, rhythms, that garden, those certain fruits, those certain tastes, like that's home in all of that, not just like a physical location with a lock on a door and a key. I also appreciated, Adrienne, when you talked about post-nationalists. I always think of myself like as a citizen of the world.
Yes.
Like home can be wherever I am.
Yes.
And I think for me that is, also another identity I've had is like a kid who left home early, right?
Yes.
I and that identity is like, right, I have to make home wherever I am. And like also thinking about, being in New York and being in the particular apartment I'm in right now, Ellen Stewart and La Mama Theater, that is really like a place of orientation of home, right? Like when I'm on 4th Street, like I feel endlessly at home, but not just because of the buildings, but because like very early on, when I met Ellen at 16, she put in my mind that, don't let anybody define you. Don't let anybody decide because you're this, and that on the outside, that's all you are. And I think of, what is that Audre Lorde quote? Like, if I didn't define myself for myself, then I would be crushed into other people's fantasies and eaten alive.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like Ellen exuded that. And so that idea that, yes, I can feel at home wherever I go, and with many different kinds of people and situations. It's like a kind of simultaneously orientating thing. And it kind of brings me to like the idea of thinking about like just other cultures who didn't write maps down, didn't think about maps being something on paper, but thought about maps being song lines, or
Yes.
about maps being with the seasons, right? Like in the Sahel, like
Yeah.
you move your cows, right, based on the seasons, or other indigenous traditions where geography was about memory and story and star paths, for example. So I just think about like those other kinds of mappings that we can do. um I guess, Malik, you brought up this idea or the reality of the challenges of this particular moment in time and what it means to cross borders. And, maps being these really powerful tools for defining territory, ownership, and control. And we're sitting in a particular moment in history where we've got governments that are deciding to redraw maps right in front of us, through wars, through land struggles, gentrification,
Yeah.
and just in a almost, for me, sometimes shocking way, like just this endless question about who has the right to belong in any place. And so I wanted to ask you all, when something becomes officially mapped, bordered, named, what do you see getting erased? What do you how do you see that?
Mm.
What kind of knowledge or relationships or what kinds of belongings get erased?
I actually, when you were talking about feeling at home everywhere, I was
Yes.
thinking about the feeling that I have of being a stranger everywhere. Even when I like go back home, right? When I'm like
Mm,
go to Atlanta with family, with friends, even I think there's a certain strangeness that I embrace anyway. And I don't even know when in my life that started, but it's something that I've come to embrace. And the reason why I'm thinking about it in relation to your question is that so in when I was an undergrad at Morehouse, I had the opportunity to study in Senegal, and it was a very important experience that has shaped the rest of my life trajectory. And I remember um, being in Dakar and looking for a place, and I think that I had a map on my phone, and I remember asking someone for directions and kind of like showing them the map. And this would have been maybe around 2008, I think.
right.
And I was asking for a place, and I was like kind of showing, like, okay, can you show me on the map where this place is? I don't remember what the place was, but and I just remember getting these very quizzical kind
Yes.
of looks, about what are you talking about?
Mm.
And eventually, when I kind of described the place I was looking for, first, what was told to me was, okay, uh, go to this place, then do this, then do that, right? And so it was, in effect, a story, right?
Yes.
There was a
Yes.
plot.
Yes.
There's an action, then a following action. So it was narrative, right?
Yes.
The
Yeah.
map, if you will, if we want to use that metaphor, was discursive. It was narrative, and it was very much in language,
Mm.
Mm.
right? It wasn't visual, and um, what I think that's really important to think about, right? Because I've been doing a deep dive on a scholar I really admire, R.A. Judy, a literary theorist, Black Studies scholar, and he has this line in an interview that he has with Fred Moten. He says that language contains the very possibility of our human being, right? Language contains the very possibility of our human being. And so when I think about this moment of first strangeness of me being strange, right? Asking about this visual spatialization of how to move through a space. And the eventual response that I got, which was through language, it did a number of things, right? It actually put me in relation in that moment, but it put me in like real time, in a way. And so that's like one mode of reckoning that I think is really important, and it isn't reducible to the information being transmitted about how to get to one place to another, right? There's another thing that would happen a lot in Senegal, but also in other places I've been, like Egypt, where I would ask a stranger for directions to something. And then what would actually happen, I mean, sometimes you would ask and then you would just get told directions that actually weren't correct
Right.
directions, but they
Tout
didn't want to
droit.
actually,
Everything's tout droit. Tout droit.
Basically,
yeah, they don't want to actually tell you the wrong thing. So, or they don't want to not be able to respond to your need. But often what would be the case, so somebody would just like, oh, let me take you there, right? Let me like walk you there,
Yeah.
right? So I'm gonna move through space with you, right? And so already between
Yes.
those two kind of reckonings of space, one being narrative, discursive, and language, the other itself is spatial. And I think those two ways of relating to space actually highlight how different or what is lost, right? With the map as like this visual flattening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yeah.
isn't about relation, it isn't about time necessarily. And there's a thickness there
Mm-hmm.
of experience that these kind of other modes, uh, relate to us.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah. I I resonate with so much of what you just said, Wendell. I That flattening you speak of, when I think about it, I'm like, we're talking about the earth. And the earth is a living thing that is always changing. So the instant you make a map, you kind of erase your own relevance. You make something that's instantly outdated, and the water is going to come and change it.
Right.
The rain is going to come and change it. The windstorm will change it. Like,
Yes.
it's going to change. The people will change it. The animals will 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 make new pathways. And um, I remember the first time I ever went camping or glamping. I'm not really hardcore with it, but the first time I was ever like, oh, I'm in the woods, and I'm having a great time. And the teacher said, if you get lost, find water and just follow the water, follow it downstream, follow any creek, any river, just follow it downstream, and that'll take you to people. And it's always been that's true, right? Water is a way. There's a reason we almost always build our societies, our villages, our enclaves near some kind of water, because there's a way that's like, oh yeah, this we need water to live. So water becomes a map to other living things, amongst other living things.
Mm.
And but then I think our humanity, our stories are like the water between us too. And I'm laughing, when you said this, getting lost and asking a stranger. The first time I ever came to Morocco, I took a boat from Barcelona to Tangiers, which I thought was going to be a cruise ship, but I just didn't know. It was not. It was like everyone was just filling every space. And I was in a room with three women, none of whom spoke English, or one of them spoke a little bit. And we talked all night across like four different languages. And then I land in Tangiers, and I've got to get to Fez. And I thought this was going to be like no big deal. I'm a woman traveling by myself, and I clearly look lost, and it's like everyone's kind of going their own direction, and I'm just staying there. And this man came up to me. He looked so annoyed with me, like just this dumb American. But he pulled out his pass. He was like, "Come with me," and I was like, "I'm not gonna come with you. Like where I come from in New York, you don't do that. I'm not coming with you." He was like, and he's trying to explain to me, and he pulls out his passport and he points to it. He says, "Fez." It says Fez, right? And I was like, "Yeah, Fez." And he was like, "Come with me." Come on. And I literally followed him, got in the back of a truck with no windows, and just trusted him. Like, I was like, this man, I could just feel that his humanity, even his annoyance with me, right? Like, this man was feeling such annoyance with me, but that was how his humanity was showing up, that he was still going to make sure I got where I needed to go. And he took me to the train station in Tangiers, and then he left me with his suitcases. He said, "You sit here. I'll be back." And then he ran off and ran errands and did what he needed to do. He came back, he brought me some tea, but at no point did he drop his annoyance with me, and at no point did he drop his care. I loved it. It's one of my favorite experiences I ever had. And I landed in Fez at like 2 o'clock in the morning, safely in a new world, right? But yeah, I think that getting lost gets erased. I think a map makes us think we know where we're going and what we can expect when we get there. And it's one of my least favorite things about imperialism and colonization is trying to map everything and know everything and make everything the same, make everything like you can expect something. The unexpected is what makes life interesting. So I think we lose a lot, even though I always have a map with me. I'm always, even here at home, going to places I know, I often will just plug in the map to be like, okay, what's the traffic going to be like or whatever.
It's so funny that you when you brought the the sense of orientation in Africa is so I think that map is not lines in Africa. It's gonna be lines. It's I think map is like in Africa it's about memories. What you have. What you have in your mind and what you have, what your mind memorize, and that's why people, I can, I'm here. I can when I travel in the West, you can make like example. You ask for delivery, they're gonna follow the map until where you are. In Senegal, you ask for delivery, the person gonna keep calling you until you get to your door. For them it's like they also I also appreciate it. It's like they refuse this this block that we should be in constantly in communication, and we have to keep that. We have to keep that. And talking about what block, I think it's I made a joke before with Wendell saying that no, are you in the Inshallah clock? I think it's the capitalism has changed our way of living. Throwing us all this kind of technology to control us, and I think that Africa also we resist that because we always think that okay, we're gonna be in our time. We get that that sometimes it might frustrate me that how people live, how people see time, down there. But it's still like there's something very beautiful. It's like okay, we gotta take care of us. We're not thinking about what the time is. The time is not only at one point. It's the time is can be like a global understanding, and also just what technology has erased in us. I think is our sense of humanity.
Yeah. I was gonna say to that, the last few times I've been to Senegal, I've noticed just how whenever I ask about getting places or do something, it's a localization. It's like drop me the pin, and it's so it's changing too.
Yes, it's changing.
Yeah, it's changing, but it's still like people are so there's so many people who are so nostalgic about map and time and stuff like that, because you say you just mentioned it, every time you go somewhere in Senegal, you're asking for a place, someone gonna guide you until where you go,
They'll take you
until
to
they're gonna take you the place. And
But so then it sounds like you have to not lose patience. Because
exactly.
I think that's one of the things that we lose in the United States a lot is like any patience for even the friction of relationship, the friction of something moving slowly, the friction of someone being like, I'll come with you and we'll move at my pace. Yeah.
Well, it's also here, there's also this idea that time is money, right? Like if you
Mm-hmm.
waste my time,
Yep.
you're spending something that's mine. My
Yes.
time, my money. And I
Yes.
think that brings me back to that idea that you were talking about, that kind of flattening. Wendell, you said like maps aren't really about relationships. They're
Mm-hmm.
actually, I think they're about control, right?
Mm-hmm.
These things drawn. It's not about the way the water moves, the way the wind moves, the way the animal. It's not that. It's like, how can I control you? How can I own you? And
Yeah.
so a question that I've been sitting with for a while, like related to maps, but also related to how we are in relation. What does it mean to love without ownership? Can I love a place? Can I love a human? Can I love anything without feeling that I own it? What does that mean?
I love this question, Charlotte. I love this question. I mean, I'll jump in because this is what I'm writing about right now. I'm writing a book that's just love, and I'm trying to understand love that's not ownership. Like that's the fundamental piece. And I think of it as like if a story is a map, then the story that most of us are told about love has been guiding us to the wrong location in all the wrong ways. It's like trying to take every wrong turn and end up someplace good. And I think because it's about ownership, right now it's like I need to find someone and pretend to be someone else. And they're also going to be pretending to be someone else. And then somehow we're supposed to commit to each other. And then I own that person. And they should never even look at anyone else. And they shouldn't do anything that's outside of like what we are building, what we've decided. And I think that same thing happens with place. People are like, oh, I love this land. I love this land. And so I'm going to build a fence around this land. And the way that I love it is going to be the fence. That's the sign of my love, is that it's mine. And a document says I own it and you don't. And you have to go now because, right? It's all the same thinking. And so I think we need a new story about what it means to love a place. And I think the story is about care and responsibility. Part of what I feel like I've been learning from Palestine, like showing up in my solidarity work with Palestine. I love Palestine. I've never been to Palestine, but I love Palestine. I feel like I can smell Palestine. I love particular Palestinians. I've gotten to know their voices and their stories. I grieve for them and with them. But part of what I love is how much they love their land, and that their sense of like we're staying right here is not about what we can map or create a border around, but like I love this tree and I'm going to stay and take care of it. This is where my ancestors are buried. I have to care for this. Like I love this place. I would never bomb it. I love it. There's a love. And I feel like part of why I moved back to the South was because I needed land I could love. I was nomadic. I was going everywhere and I was making beautiful connections, but there's something different about living on the land where I know my ancestors are buried and where they survived, and like I need to love them. I need to come hear their stories, and but not from a place of ownership. I know that I could never own land. It's such a preposterous idea when you try to really wrap your mind around the idea of owning something so much grander and more eternal than we are, right? Like I'm just here for a second on this land. I'm lucky if she even notices my presence. Like the land goes forever. It's the earth, but I get to be here for a little while stewarding. And I'm now trying to feel like, okay, so what does that stewardship mean, even in our relationships, right? How do I love my partner's body from a place of stewardship and responsibility and care,
Yes.
as opposed to a place of ownership and jealousy and control and trying to put fences around her or
Yes.
here or even myself.
Mm.
Mhm.
It's making me think a bit about the difference between um, I don't know, the phrase coming to my mind is longing and belonging, but that's not quite it,
Mm.
right? Because I don't think even belonging and ownership is the terms that are coupled. Let me explain what I mean. So as we're thinking about kind of like ownership, I think really means not being able to love almost, right? Like if whether it's land or another person is a kind of not loving. It's
Mm.
something else. You know,
Yeah.
Okay.
it is
Mm-hmm.
a it's possession, it's force, control, etc. But like longing on the other hand, right, is
Mm.
something that you have no control over.
Mm.
And in here, I'm thinking about I was looking at Dion Brand's book in preparation for this conversation, Maps to a Door of No Return. And it's a really interesting book because it's essentially about diasporic longing
Mm.
and as opposed to belonging. And map is, of course, a metaphor over the course of the book. And it often is referring to like little fragments that she's collecting, um, you know, through, literature, history, different reflections, Um, but it is what's really powerful about the work in my mind is that it's longing for a non-place. So, she explains early on that the door of no return for the Black diaspora isn't the actual sites, right? They're rather just like these symbols of a rupture, right? Of a belonging that can never be retrieved. Uh, and so the longing is there, and the longing is what kind of um, makes a kind of, a black consciousness, if you will. Um, there are a few different threads in that, but this is what this conversation's make me think about.
Mm. Beautiful.
Uh, Going back to the belonging, Adrian, how how we can love a place, or how we can love our partner. I can go back to just like I was talking to my one of my brother, one of my siblings, like 2 days ago, about some land that my dad had left. You know, my dad found a village in the 70s in the Casamance. It's like the south of Senegal. There was like this the time of famine that people didn't have things you know
Oh, famine.
yeah, famine, yeah. And
Ah.
he found a village in the 1978, asking like his family and his community to join him in that land to make a new life,
Yeah.
work the land and also have possibility to survive. And at that time, it was a really tough time, but he went through that journey and made the village. And now, the time he was asking people to come to join him, and he was giving people what they what to live with and build a new life. But now, it's like 40 years after,
Mm.
people start like the government get to that land and they start like wanna sell the land
Yeah.
to people. And now, I remember we had like a small piece of land. They were asking us, if you want land here, because your dad found this village and you have to have a piece of land, just to honor him. And that was not a time that we should buy something. We just like give someone something to the community who live here, that they can like gather and also pray for you, that this land can be very fruitful. And now there's a different now there's a really ownership in that on that land, because
Mm.
the government, the politics start like making some um, structure that people should buy the land, you know um, and I mean
Mm.
that make me think it's like, wow, why why we think that money and and think the ownership uh, how how we should think differently the ownership, because to own that time a land there, it means that you accept to be there, and to accept to be part of the community. And now it means that have the money to have a piece of land there.
Yeah.
And go back to your partnership and love in relationship. I think me loving you, it means that I allow you your space to be who you are, and also allow me to be who I am, because I cannot owe you, I own you, because you part of me you already, and I'm part of you, already. That ownership is that should not exist there.
No, Thich Nhat Hanh, I always think of his quote. He said, the point is to love such that the other feels free, right? So that you feel free, so that the other person feels free. And I think that why can't we offer that to the land as well? Like, imagine how differently our lives would be. Charlotte, I'm curious to hear what you think about this.
Well, I want to keep going on this track because I also realize, what I'm also interested in this conversation are like, yeah, we have all these inherited maps, right? Political maps, economic maps, social maps, and that's like organized how we see the world in one way. But I am interested in like each of you or each of us, like what are the practices that help you imagine different ways of organizing the world? Like how do you create liberatory terrain? What does that look like for you, or how have you seen that, happening in front of you? Why don't I start? Yes. So, I mean, one of the practices that I've been doing my whole life is making theater, gathering people. I think for me, that is really liberatory terrain, to gather people and to say, there's a million things that could separate us, but we're here. And going back to story, we're all listening to the same story. We're all in the same room. We're all breathing the same air. Maybe in this experience, we sing something together. Maybe we sweat together. Maybe we just brush up against each other. Maybe we feel we want to, cry at the same moment. But there's just this other thing that is more human, and that triggers memory, that those human memories, which may not be, like you said about Palestine, you've never been there, but you love it. You talked about that longing. I mean, my whole life changed when I started to fall into the pathway of what my longing was.
Yes.
I knew that I met my half-brother in 2015. I knew that there was something there. As an only child, I knew that there was something there, someone there. And so following that longing, and then following that longing led me to Senegal and led me to a whole other set of loves. You know what I mean? And so I do think that there's something about following that path of longing, following, Wendell, you talk about Al-Khaib, and that is just sitting on, like, since you brought that concept to me, that is constantly sitting on my mind, that idea of the power of the things we can't see, but we feel and that we know to be true, and that it's almost like you can smell it, but you can't write it down, you can't name, maybe it's unnamed, and just following that. As a theater artist, I sit in the dark a lot. I sit in unknowing a lot. And I've realized that's been the path of my life from when I left home at 15.
I love that.
So, yeah, I'm curious with all of you. What is that, how reorganizing the world in different ways, liberatory terrain,
I think that, we, going back to your, you mentioned it in your practice, like gathering people. I think we're losing the path of humanity now. Because, we don't talk, to each other a lot. Especially, I realized that, every time I leave Africa and I come to the West, I'm feeling that inside of me, I'm not alone. I'm not lonely, but I feel, sometimes that I'm lonely, because, it's living in a place where saying hi is not normal. or someone can walk to your house, or someone can walk to where you are and without saying hi, and that person see you, but you doesn't exist in front of that person. That make me scared, because it's like we're using our power of humanity, we're using our humanity. And I think that's the only way we can make this world better. It's like we have to think about our humanity. We have to think about how we can live together and how we can care, to each other, and also redefine also care and respect and love.
Earlier I said that I see myself as a philologist, which I understand to mean a lover of study. And, I take that formulation from my reading of Malcolm X, actually. Uh, but I also understand it in the way that, some Black studies scholars are talking about Black study, like Fred Moten and
Yeah.
others, Joshua Myers, as this thing that exceeds. So I'm a university professor, and so my point of reference is the university, uh,
That's
for better,
okay.
for worse. But I think the idea of Black study as this thing that pre-exists, uh, the institution,
Mhm.
the performance of our professional roles, what have you. And it's not even necessarily this thing that we do in a learned way, but actually this collective intelligence that precedes all of that, right? That's always there. And even thinking of study and Black study in particular as, as Mo would say, as like rehearsal, right? It's that being together, the practice of living, actually, and recognizing the modes of intellection that is always already there in that living. Um, but I mean it both ways, right? I mean it's like, let's sit down and read a thing together,
Mm.
Yeah.
study, right?
Yeah.
And also recognizing that even when we're not having that thing in common in front of us, that we're also doing this thing of collective intelligence. And so being engaged with that for me is grounding, in the Walter Rodney sense, but just in a more general sense of uh, orienting me and kind of remapping, okay, what do we have to do, right? That classical question, what is to be done? In 2023 at Rutgers Newark, there was a really important encampment, solidarity encampment, Gaza Solidarity Encampment, and we founded the People's University, and
Yes.
study was an absolute fundamental part of that. And one of the particularities of that camp, I mean, it will lasted for 40 days. It was the one in New Brunswick was, kind of busted up after 3 or 4 days, but the particularities of Newark actually created this window, and it was really amazing because it really became this community of mutual aid,
Yeah.
where we were oriented to each other's and our needs
Mm-hmm.
and study, whether that be in the kind of more literal sense, or the kind of deeper sense of what we do together in the practices of living. Uh, it was there,
Yeah.
and that's in the past, that was 2023, and since then that's been a major reference point for me as thinking about, okay, not only how do we understand the lay of the land in this moment, but where we're going to be going moving forward, um, coming together, engaging in study,
Yeah.
and living the world we want to be.
Yeah, I'm very aligned with all of this, obviously. Like I'm so into this conversation, but I have two quotes I want to pendulum between. One is Nina Simone, who said to leave the table if love is not being served. And I think many times in my life I have had to like, because what I do is I'm a writer, but what I do really is I be. I'm from some other place and I'm being here, like I think we all are, but I have this quote on my phone. It comes up every day at 6 o'clock at the end of the day that says, be the moral center of the post nation. Be the moral center of the post nation. And that my job is to listen. And when I feel uncomfortable, when I feel like this is not good for my humanity, I have to leave and then I have to figure out what I'm longing for, like what that place created a longing for in me. And it's made me accept the validity of my feelings, that I'm like, my feelings in some way have been the true thing, like in spite of all the propaganda that I grew up inside of, in spite of the, it really is a cult. I think it's many cults, but to live inside the military industrial complex in the United States, inside of capitalism, inside of the church, it's like cult on top of cult on top of cult on top of cult of people telling you how to be and what to do and not do and where to go. And then
A
underneath
death
all of
cult
that,
at that.
huh?
A death cult
A
at
death
that.
cult, that
Yes.
Saeed Jones says, right? A death cult. It's just like I'm a living thing. I'm not interested in producing death for anyone. I'm not interested in participating in it. And so I've been very uncomfortable in so many places, so many institutions, so many opportunities, but that discomfort has always led me towards freedom. It's always led me towards better relationship and slowing down, and I think I may come off as rebellious, but I'm being very rigorous about a relationship to the future that I can feel. It's as true for me. It feels like a layer on top of where we are. And Charlotte, we know we co-created space together. So you know what I mean. I'm like,
Yes.
we can go there. The portal is available. We can open
Yes.
these portals. And then I think of my work like you create the gathering space. And I did gathering for a long time. I love gathering space. But I think now a lot of my work is like message in a bottle work, where I'm just like, I just have to write the truth down as honestly as I can, and I have to send it off in a book, send it off in a little meme carousel, send it off in like whatever art form I'm making. And a lot of people won't understand it. They won't like it. They won't whatever, but that's okay because someone will pick it up and they'll be like, this is the moral center of the post nation that I also want to be a part of. And I am constantly finding my people this way. Other people who are like, yeah, I'm disgruntled with the conditions of the present. And that disgruntled present self is a map towards that next future place. And so often I'm like, how do we get out of just complaining about this and actually start practicing that? And I think what you said, Wendell, almost all the encampments, all the students I talked to that were in the encampments, I went to Columbia, I flunked out, yay. But then I got invited to come back as a graduation speaker for the people's graduation for the Palestinian students. And then I knew I was on the right path, right? I was like, Columbia will never invite me back, but these students will, because they see the future. They see the future that I'm speaking of. I see this future that they're speaking of, and we're calling it into existence with each other. I'm always asking people the question, what is it you can do that you will do? you know
Mm.
like, I think our message in the bottle has to be an invitation to go ahead and be doing it now, be living it now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Malick, I love that you're like, I'm in New York, but I want to go home and I want to slow down. I want people who say hello to me in the street. It costs me something to be away from a place where people say hello. That's I just love that, because I'm like, you just gave me another instruction. How often do I leave my house and not say hello because I got my headphones in and I'm doing my independent Virgo thing? I'm like, I could just soften in that little way. That would increase my humanity here in the belly of the beast. And there's enough connection. I wrote something here. A lot of my work I have to do in solitude. Like, a lot of it is with spirit, and I have to, it's a lonely life in a way being a writer. Like, there's a lot of time that I have to listen for something that's beyond here. But I have enough loving connections in my life that I feel safe to go into that solitude and to go to spirit. People know what I'm doing. You know, when I say I'm writing, like everyone in my life is like, oh, okay. You know, they trust me. They trust me to go get something good and come back now. So then that helps me trust myself to be like, this is not a personal message. This is a collective message. I'm just honored because my job is to listen for it. And because I'm obedient, more messages keep coming. And that's one of the things I want to tell people, that I'm like, you may not know it yet, but if you feel disgruntled with this world, then you are a point on the map of the future. You already are. And so the more you can activate that, turn that up and figure out like, what is the action to take from this disgruntled energy? What is it that I can do, that I will do with this lifetime? Because you don't know. As a teacher, you're shining a light on every classroom. As a theater director, you're shining a light every time. As a photographer, you shine a light with what you turn your attention to. It's really hope inducing to me, right? That so many people are actually points of another constellation, another star, another way to go. We are stardust, right? We really are.
I just want to say we're at time, but thank you all for being a part of my constellation.
Yes, you're part of my constellation.
This is really sweet. I don't know if anybody has a last thing that's resting on their heart or their mind, but I just have a lot of gratitude for you all. Thank you.
Deep love and respect.
Yeah. Thank you. This is
I love this constellation.
Yes.
Yeah, very humanizing
yes.
conversation, grounding. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Lots of love, folks.
Bye,
Ramadan Mubarak.
Bye.
Soon we will be over tea in Dakar.
Yes,
okay?
the next one.
Wendell, that's where we're gonna meet. Okay.
I'll be there.
Yes.
Please.
All right. Good.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Be well.
Peace,
Travel
y'all.
safely.
Be
Yeah,
well.
thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.